The readings for this weekend, they offer us a very rich opportunity to reflect on what it means to care. And what it means to care. You know, there's some interesting phrases that the book of the prophet Amos, that Amos uses that we hear this morning that I think can really draw us more deeply into the message that Jesus is announcing in the parable. And so I'd like to kind of share with you a couple phrases in the hopes that it would kind of allow us an opportunity to dive more deeper into this great message that God has for us. You know, that first phrase that Amos uses is what's called, he says, the complacent in Zion. The complacent in Zion. Now, another word for Zion is Jerusalem. And so Amos is making reference to the ancient city of David, what we know as the ancient city of David, because King David founded Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem is known, and the Holy Land is for being also another phrase. It's known as the Southern Kingdom. Now, all this will come together in just a second. So complacent in Zion, Jerusalem, city of David, Southern Kingdom. Okay? Now, Amos is warning the people that are living in the Southern Kingdom to stop their lazy ways and to look out for invasions from the north. Now, the north is referenced here with the word the collapse of Joseph. Joseph is also known as the Northern Kingdom, the place where the relatives of the people of Jerusalem were living. And so there's this turmoil that's taking place. And people from the Northern Kingdom, they're moving into the Southern Kingdom. And so God is saying through the prophet to care for those in the north who are moving their families into the Southern Kingdom. We're all one family. We're all related. Don't see them as your rival. As Paul really powerfully points out, that the people of God pursue righteousness. Pursue righteousness in your quest for Jesus. Pursue devotion and faith and love and patience and gentleness. And so there's this mixture that's taking place in that first reading, and God is speaking out through the prophet Amos, calling people into a deeper awareness of who we are as men and women made in God's image and likeness. And so, turning our attention to the parable, Jesus highlights two people. There's Lazarus and the rich man. And that highlighting is very important. Here is the rich man that came and went about his business all day, backwards and forwards, or back and forth. As he went back and forth, as he crossed the path of Lazarus the beggar, as Lazarus was there in the doorway of where this rich man would go back and forth. And then both of them die. One is taken to the bosom of Abraham, and the other is not taken to the bosom of Abraham. As we hear, he's in torment. And he sees Lazarus. He sees Father Abraham, and he says, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to dip his finger in a pool of water to quench my thirst. And Father Abraham says, a great chasm has established. A great chasm. The behavior of the rich man and this dynamic that takes place, we can hear Jesus say that the way that we behave in this life has very real ramifications and in the natural world, our nature, but then also has implications in the supernatural world, or that which is above nature, the supernatural world. And so, as Lazarus was in torment He experiences the comfort of the bosom of Abraham, and vice versa for the rich man. But yet, at the same time, even though the rich man was condemned in the parable, this reminds us of, and Jesus is calling our attention to the fact that we are a human family. And as we are a human family, we're called to live in a relationship of love, living life deliberately by choosing to see Christ in one another, in the here and now. And as we choose Christ in the here and now, we will be able to freely choose Christ more easily in that which is to come. Or in other words, it will be easier to see Christ in the life that is to come. In one sense, the parable speaks to the fact that the way that we live here and now, as I mentioned, has natural consequences, but also supernatural implications. And so in that regard, we're invited to look to our tradition to see how we can continue to grow in our relationship with Jesus, both loving God, following the great commandments, loving God with our whole heart, mind, and soul, and then loving our neighbor as ourself. I'm reminded of, we're getting ready to celebrate the feast of Saint Therese this coming Wednesday, and I'm reminded of Saint Therese and the way and what she taught, the little way that she taught. It seems incredibly simple, but yet incredibly profound. She mentions about how as we live, we should strive and try to do everything for Jesus. Try to do everything for Jesus. Now, I know that that's a little easier said than done, or perhaps a lot easier said than done. When I say everything, I'm not intentionally exaggerating or being hyperbolic, but doing everything for Jesus. So those things that offer us comfort, those things that are convenient for us, those are the easy things to do for Jesus, right? You know what I mean. Like opening a door for someone, that's an easy thing to do for Jesus, right? Or when someone sneezes, saying, "God bless you," that's an easy thing to do for Jesus, right? Those are the easy things. But those things that we do that are easy, they help us, they strengthen us, so that when the challenging things present themselves, we can more easily see Jesus and do things for Jesus in that regard. For instance, when we hear of the rising concern of poverty in our country, the epidemics of the opioids and methamphetamines and alcoholism and other addictions and people needing help and people wanting help, seeing the face of Jesus in those individuals, as uncomfortable as that may be, that's what we're called to. And it's doing those little things that help us to see Jesus in those bigger, more complicated situations. But to see Jesus very simply, I do this for you, Lord. I do this for you. Why? Because I love you and I see you in this other person, and I love this other person too. And I want them to experience your love. I want them to experience the joy that you bring, the joy that you say in the gospel, the peace that only you can give, the peace that the world cannot give. My friends, these readings today, they remind us in a very powerful way that we're connected as a human family, made in God's image and likeness, endowed with free will and intellect and reason. And using our free will, intellect, and reason, we can see the face of Christ in others if we choose to. I think one of the more tragic things, of the more tragic points of this parable, was the fact that the name of Lazarus was known. The rich man knew the name of the one in need, but yet he chose not to help him. He knew him. Father Abraham, send Lazarus. He knew his name. That's pretty tragic. that he knew who he could help, but he didn't. But also, I think in a very intentional way, the parable doesn't name the rich man. The rich man doesn't have a name, because it seems as though that the rich man is a reflection of each and every one of us. We can have those tendencies to just sort of walk by, those tendencies to not see the face of Jesus and others. But it's in those moments where when we experience that sting, that we can look toward the saints, that we can be inspired by the little way of Saint Therese, this little saint who said, just do it for Jesus. Experience his love in your heart and share that with others. And so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us here today? It means that in various different ways we can offer a compassionate gesture to others in those easy, convenient ways. It was kind of funny, the other day I was at Safeway shopping, just going through, getting my groceries, and somebody sneezed, and I said, "God bless you." And they looked at me and went, "Oh my goodness, thank you." And it was just one of those sort of unassuming moments. I didn't even think about it, but it was just the moment of compassion, as simple as it may sound, compassion towards others. But then also, there's other ways too. There's volunteering at the soup kitchens and helping out at cooperative care. There's, even if you physically aren't able to do that, or maybe other limitations present themselves, but we have ways of helping others in need here at the parish. Our youth have come up with some amazingly creative ideas to meet the needs of those who are in need, and to help them in ways that are creative, but yet proclaim the joy of the gospel. And so, my friends, as we go about this day, let us be on the lookout to do those little things for Christ, to be those extensions of Jesus' hands in the world. And as we do that, we're reminded of the great command of Jesus. As Saint Therese says it so beautifully, she says, if we want to live a life of love of God, we must not fail in our love towards our neighbor.